back to the Bold Podcast. I'm Todd Birch, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this inspiring journey of personal growth and leadership. Together with my guests, we'll dive into transformational stories, uncovering how small, intentional changes can create massive positive results in your life. From overcoming challenges and setting impactful goals to building lasting habits and living with confidence, health, and positivity, we'll explore it all. And if you're ready to embrace a growth mindset and unlock the best version of yourself, then let's spark that transformation today. Today, we're thrilled to have Dr. Nate Salah, a lifelong entrepreneur, award-winning educator, and advisor to business leaders. As a CEO of Salah Financial Corp for over 3 decades, Dr. Salah has guided entrepreneurs toward financial success, personal growth, and meaningful social impact. He is also the founder of the Great Summit Leadership Academy and the podcast host of A Call to Leadership, where he shares his passion for faith-infused entrepreneurship and servant leadership. An inspiring mentor, marathon runner, and devoted family man, Dr. Salah is committed to helping others rise above limitations and create a future filled with exceptional leadership. Listeners, get ready for an inspiring episode. Dr. Nate, welcome to the Bolt Podcast, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much, Todd. Glad to be here.
It's so good to see you. I enjoyed our conversation. What was it, a couple months ago, right?
Yeah, that's right.
We had so many similarities. I feel like we're kindred spirits, right?
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm just so impressed with everything that you're doing, that you've done. There's so much to unpack here. A lot of my listeners are leaders. So I definitely want to focus on leadership.
Yeah.
To me, there were really 2 themes that were woven into your story throughout: leadership, obviously, and faith. So really want to touch on those today. But if you wouldn't mind, Nate, just tell us a little bit about kind of your struggles, your challenges, because that was one thing you and I hit it off, right? When you asked me and I shared my story, you're like, oh, wow, I kind of had a similar story. So we don't have to go into all the details, but I think it's good to set up, because to get where you're at, right, you have to build resilience and to get that grit. And that takes going through some challenges and overcoming those obstacles.
Man, doesn't it ever, Todd? Yeah. I think about resilience. I think about all the different characteristics of leaders. Of course, a lot of my education and my research has been in the study of leadership, business leadership, entrepreneurial leadership, and faith-based leadership. And life is in that direction. And people ask, what are some of the most essential skills or traits, requirements for leadership? And I would say at the very top of the list, or hovering in the top 3, is resilience. If you're not a resilient leader, you're just not going to make it, because you're going to run into roadblocks. You're going to run into challenges. You're going to run into situations. And your listener today is like, yeah, me, right? Me. I don't think there's a person on the planet who hasn't run into challenges. You say, well, maybe there's people who have had a silver spoon in their mouth and they've got a cush life. Well, that's a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah,
right.
all the
challenge
mindset
yourself to get some kind of tension in your life. And when we're facing tension, I grew up, we were poor, we didn't have much. Kind of the story of the immigrant family. My family migrated from the Mediterranean area, and my parents divorced when I was young, single mom, and just trying to get by. And that was the journey. My mom was she was a hustler. Like, she would do whatever it took. And I didn't really understand that when I was little. Most kids don't. You have memories, but you can't put together the larger context of what's going on. I remember one time we were at Denny's, and when I was a kid in the 70s, there was this 99-cent kids chicken meal. You got a chicken drummy, some French fries, and a soda. It was $1. And I remember eating that, and I offered my mom a fry, and I'm like, I wonder why she's not eating. And the reason was there was just 99 cents. There was just enough for one. And it impacted me later in life as I began to unpack this struggle that she had faced, that she had taught adversity is not something to have misery over. Adversity is something to have mastery over. It's
Mm.
not something to disengage from. It's something to take head on and find a way. And that was a valuable lesson. A lot of them. My mom used to climb into dumpsters and at Goodwill pick up stuff to take to the flea market. Hey, perfectly good stuff. And I'm like, man, why is she going into the trash? Because she's looking for ways to make a few bucks. Like, this is like real, Todd. You know, this really happens. And then she got on her feet more. She started these businesses. She had a pet shop and a bakery and all these other businesses. It's funny. I asked her later in life, because I became an entrepreneur, of course. I asked her later in life, "Hey, Mom, what was your favorite business that you had?" She said, "None of them." I didn't like business. I didn't like being a business owner, but she had to find a way. She had to find a way, and that taught me valuable lessons throughout life of resilience of that. And of course, then I struggle, right? I mean, look, man, we all have challenges, but the quick and dirty is, I thought when I was a new entrepreneur at 21, I was going to get rich. That was the reason why I dropped out of college, man. Hey,
Right.
I'm going to be like these guys that I see on TV or in a magazine, like a Michael Dell or Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, right? All of them dropped out of college. I'm
Right.
like, oh yeah, that's it. That's the ticket.
Follow
It was
the
hard.
money.
And so within a few years, I was $100,000 in debt because I didn't know what I was doing. So
Mm.
like now I needed $1.1 million. Like I was going the opposite direction. And I realized through that journey, you talk about leadership, is even though my mom certainly was a great inspiration when I was young, I didn't really have the kind of leadership and mentorship in my life to help me to really identify what was most important and how to pursue true purpose in my journey as a leader. I developed the resilience that was necessary, which is important as a foundation. However, I didn't really have direction. And just as well as I do, leadership requires direction, right? Because leaders are going places. In fact, I look at leadership from the perspective of four critical elements of leadership. That first, it involves discovery. As leaders, we have to be discovering where we want to go, right? So we're observers of the world around us.
Mm-hmm.
And what's wrong with this picture? Because no one wants to go to a worse future state. Everyone wants to go to something better. And so in that desire, we have to carve out a visual representation that we can communicate of what a better future looks like, whether it's your business, whether it's your family, whether it's your community, whether it's your faith relationship, whether it's your spiritual life. We have to be observing and discovering. So discovery is the first element, I believe, of all leadership. And I didn't have a lot of discovery in my life because I didn't have anyone who can help me to point to a direction of a better future state. So I was getting in trouble. My teen years, I don't know if you ever got in trouble, Todd. I got in a lot of trouble, brother.
I was lucky. I got in trouble once. I'm so embarrassed. I don't even want to share it, but yeah, I spent a day in juvie, but that was enough. That was enough for me.
Good for
honestly.
you. Good for you. I grew up on the west side of Chicago, so it was trouble everywhere.
Right.
All you had to do was look one way and you can get in trouble. And so I just got in a lot of trouble. And I had moved back with my dad for a little while. My mom moved back overseas, and I didn't want to live overseas when I was a teenager. And so I was just trying to figure it out, and I was just doing a lot of the wrong things because I hadn't discovered a better future state. And it took some time. It took some time to really get out of that hole and find a new way, because I was on a one-way road to nowhere. Todd, if I just be honest,
dude, I was right there with you.
Yeah. It's a tough road.
It's
and
lonely.
You feel alone.
Yeah, it's lonely. It's dark. It's foggy. Yeah.
And so in that journey, man, when there's just even a sliver of light that finds its way into that darkness, it's like, oh my goodness, there's hope, there's possibility. And I really believe there's at least two kinds of hope. There's hopelessness that sees things only as they are. And they can be dark, they can be lonely, they can be cold, they can feel as if there really is no way out. That's hopelessness. And then there's another kind of hope, fullness. And hopefulness sees things as surely as they can be bright, engaging, life-giving, And as leaders, I believe one of our primary mandates as leaders, my primary responsibilities, is to move toward that hopefulness and show others the pathway to that hopefulness. Sometimes we don't have all the answers. We never do. But we can draw out what that might look like and invite others to join us along that journey. And I believe that's the second aspect that I tend to look at leadership from the perspective of, if the first is discovery, the second is influence. Of course, we know leadership is influence. It's important.
John
It's
Maxwell.
essential. John Maxwell, right?
All about that.
Yeah, all about influence. And I would say it's not the starting point, but it's definitely the middle ground, the middle space. The starting point is always discovery, right? As leaders, we always have to be figuring out what might look better. And then we start sharing it. We start sharing that vision of where we desire to go. And then others who share in that vision, they say, okay, let's roll, right? It reminds me of Forrest Gump, if you remember the movie, when he just started running. And like all these people just started running behind him, right? He said, I'm just running. Well, that's, he had influence, right? And he didn't necessarily know where that end state was, but they shared in that journey. And of course, the third part, then once you influence, at least effective leadership has an achievement element. Effective leaders are achievers. They get stuff done. You can be the kind of leader that influences, and you can be the kind of leader that has great discovery. But if you can't achieve, then you're just not an effective leader. And we've followed leaders like that. Perhaps we've been leaders like that. And I think it's so incumbent upon us to deliver, to have impact. And I think that's all wrapped around this fourth element of shared purpose, right? So I look at leadership, if I were to define it, I would say leadership is the discovery of, the influence toward, and the achievement of shared purpose. That's how I embody this journey as leaders. And of course, just to go back to your opening statement, you're going to need resilience. I mean, there's no two ways about it. You think about leaders who have achieved on a massive scale, right? Think of, I guess in our modern times, perhaps an Elon Musk really comes to mind. I mean, you talk about one industry, automotive. Okay, wow. Okay, the electric car, got that to fly. Most people couldn't. There were so many different manufacturers, never got that to fly. And then he's like, well, let's do some rockets next. That wasn't enough of a challenge, right?
Right.
And then, well, let's work on this, this neural link. Let's see if we can get, people who have never been able to see or walk or use their limbs to do that again. I mean, these are like any one of these in and of itself for a lifetime is more than enough to wrap your mind around. Yet, there's just three, right? There we can go on. I guess the point I'm making is massive adversity along the way, and the resilience, the ability to say, hey, look, you know what? I don't have it all figured out, but here's where we're going. If anyone wants to keep going this road with me, let's do it. And I love this way. He had mentioned something some time ago about giving up. I'm paraphrasing. The only time you give up is when you're basically have total disaster. In other words, you're no longer living, right? So as long as we have breath, Todd, it's not over. We still got this. And even opening our conversation today, right? This, in this morning, right? We got the whole day ahead of us. It ain't over.
And we're starting off with a great conversation.
Yeah, man. So that's been kind of my framework for the challenges I've faced in life and the leadership that I've developed over time. I've been in business for, as you had mentioned, 30 years, and I've learned and grown. Started off pretty rocky, because I was a novice, and
you were young, man. You started
21 years old, man.
I mean, back in those times, that was rare, right? Yeah. That was rare.
My buddy went to college.
Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, but I mean,
those were they were anomalies, and I had to make a decision. Did I want to be, did I want the entrepreneur track or the career track? And I was watching my buddies. They were getting great jobs. Out of college. They were engineering or different areas. At the time, you're talking in the 90s, $40,000-$50,000 was decent money back then to start.
Absolutely.
For indies. And I'm like, woof. And I'm struggling. I'm eating ramen noodles. I'm at Aldi's just getting 25-cent bread because I'm
like you are in college.
Like you are, yeah. I'm like, exactly. I'm a struggling business owner. And I think part of it, though, is people say, well, what gives you resilience? I think part of it, at least for me, was that I like the way Arnold Schwarzenegger put it. There is no plan B.
Mm.
There was no plan B. It was it. Like, the old adage of Hernan Cortez of scuttling the ships, right? There's just no turning back. This is my course and whatever it takes.
Right. I think that goes back to getting out of your comfort zone, right? Not being afraid to fail, not being afraid to take risks. Like you said with Elon, I go back to resilience with Bill Gates, even Walt Disney. A lot of times all we hear about are the successes. We don't really hear about the many, many failures that these people went through to get to one success. Walt Disney, he failed many a times, but he kept going. Bill Gates, his first business flopped like crazy. He kept going. Look where he's at today. So I think it's about not being afraid, right?
Yeah.
Getting out of your comfort zone, to live on the edge, to push yourself to a limit, to fulfill your dreams. But there's going to be bumps. You're going to fail. Learn, pick yourself up, and then you'll start to build resilience for when you start that business that does flourish, because there's going to be bumps along the way, right? You said, I was reading on your website, business is all about solving problems. And it all comes down to a mindset. And everything you were talking about, to me, I love how you unpacked leadership. Your philosophy on it is right on par with how I believe in leadership. But that really comes down to a mindset. It's how you approach any given day, problem, or scenario. The choice is yours. And that's influence, because you're going to influence how everyone else on your team is perceiving that problem or that client or that customer.
1,000%. You so many nuggets in what you just said. I look at failure as failure's not final, it's feedback. It's only final when we give up. So just don't give up, right? Use it as part of your playbook. Look, we don't, and I've said this before, we don't look at little babies when they fall, when they're learning to walk and scold them, right? You don't say, oh, you blew it. Right? We don't do that. We do that to the adults when they're like, they're trying to figure stuff out. Like, no, hey man, a little bit of grace, because this is I'm trying to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And as much as we learn and we read, and it's great to do that, many of these situations are on the fly, and we're in motion. Something you said about these leaders who have done such large projects. You think about Steve Jobs, who was ousted from his own company. I mean, come on, like how many people does that happen to? And you talk about Walt Disney. In fact, I was just, of course, a lot of my PhD research was on Walt Disney, Steve Jobs, and Milton Hershey. I wrote my dissertation on their vision and formation. Yeah, and so I have a whole section of my work on their failures. And so I just had a group just last week. I took through Disneyland. And we do a Walt Disney vision workshop, fully immersive workshop. And I'm walking through the park with these entrepreneurs, and I'm listing failure after failure after failure. And I said, imagine this park halfway through, and Walt Disney is walking through it, and he's so broke, he's over budget. He looks around, and here's what he says: nobody would rub 2 nickels together to come here.
I remember that.
And so, think about this guy. This is Walt Disney you were talking about here. Like, he was so stressed. Even his teams were like, "Oh my goodness, yeah. This is a tough road." But look at it today. Look at it today, because he had the fortitude, the resilience. And here's the other thing: the confidence. Even through that stress, he pulled himself together. Here's the thing, friends: it's okay to have stress. We're humans, right? It's what we do with it. And you said something very important, Todd: the choice. So we can't choose a lot of things. I believe, in life, by the time you get to a certain age, you realize a lot of things you cannot choose. But what you can choose, there's one thing you can choose. You can choose your attitude. You can choose an attitude of defeat. You can choose an attitude of resilient success. It's your attitude that will get you through, and others, because your attitude is contagious.
Right.
Our attitude as leaders, our energy that we put forth is contagious. We got to check that. And look, I'm not a saint in this area. I haven't arrived. Every so often, I got to slow down. I'm like, hey, Nate, how are you coming into this? How are you coming into this room? And it doesn't, not just in business, in family. When I get home, some days, and you know this, Todd, you've had a tough day. And, I've got my wife and my kid at home, just hang in the garage. Just hang in the garage just for a little while longer. Take a few breaths, reset. And here's how I think sometimes the antidote for self-pity and downtroddenness will be squashed is to think of just a few things that you can be grateful for.
I was getting ready
You
to
know
go
it.
there,
You know I was
Nate.
going there. You know I was
I was
going
getting
there.
ready to go there. I
Yeah.
didn't know you were, but gratitude will set you up. So if you can bookend your day, right? Start it off
Yeah, man.
with a gratitude journal or inside your meditation or affirmations, 2 minutes. Just write down the top 3, 5 things you're most grateful for. It
Yeah.
sets your whole day up for
Yeah.
success. And then you're in a positive mindset because you're focusing on what you have, not what you don't have.
That's right.
Boom. That's
Come
it.
on. Mic drop. And
Right?
that's it. And it could be the simplest, most elemental things like, hey, I can breathe.
We all have
Bro,
something to be grateful for. If you
I can
can't,
breathe. I
we're
could,
here.
yeah,
We're
you're
here
here.
right now.
Yeah. I mean, and here's what I'll do sometimes. And I do this when I get home. And, you know, sometimes there's a dad or a mom or even a kid that doesn't make it home. This is heavy. I'm here. They're here. Wow.
That's
You
the
know what?
truth.
Hugs, bro.
Yeah.
Hugs. And here's what I do. Two things. I'll rejoice that we're here. And also on the other side, I'll try to create an atmosphere of empathy because somewhere, somehow, and this is where the faith piece comes in, somebody is really in misery and agony because they've lost someone
Mm-hmm.
or something tragic has happened or even a scare. You know what? Let's just take a minute and pause and just reflect on that, perhaps say a prayer. And I think that's another way that we can release some of that tension, those burdens by having empathy and care for others.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a great topic with leadership, right? Leading with empathy. I know we had to really focus on this during COVID, right? I think it brought it to light more than it had ever been. And some of it has stuck around, but I know I've adopted that into my leadership practice. And, there's a throttle, right? I mean, there's a point where you still have to hold people accountable, right? But, I always say, like, assume that everybody is struggling with something because they are. Even you and I, right? I can
Yeah.
name some. We're all struggling, right?
Oh yeah.
The whole "I'm not good enough" syndrome, imposter syndrome, every day. So everybody's struggling. If you can assume that, then you can come in with an open mind, right? An empty cup, and you can lead with empathy.
100%. And I think, and so even in the servant leadership models, and you had mentioned that early on, some of the foundational or the first aspect of servant leadership are one, listening, right? So and we know not just passive listening, but active listening,
Listening.
which is not easy. It's not easy for leaders, especially entrepreneurs who have their minds are in about 1,000 places, business
Right.
people and whatnot.
And they have the answer, or they think they do, right?
Right. Yeah. But you don't,
Right.
listening means not speaking. So listening, active listening, and what is, I think that's a great starting point because what it means when we're active listening with undivided attention, by the way, is saying you're important. You are important enough for me to stop and give you the most precious the most precious commodity on the planet is my time.
Time, baby.
Just about anything on the planet you can remanufacture. Just about anything on the planet you can get more of. It's the only thing. It's
You
the
can't.
only thing that once it's gone, you can never recover that moment. It's gone forever. So it's super valuable. And so when we're listening fully, that means we're saying you're that important. And then the second piece is empathy, which is important because then you say, you know what, I not only do I hear you, but I understand what's happening with you and that acknowledgement. And as you said, then we continue to move forward. Okay. And then the third aspect is it's called healing. What really that means is it's let's start working toward resolution. Let's start working toward problem solving. And that's what you're talking about, accountability. Okay. So let's suit up now. Let's get some things done. Right. Where do we
Right.
go from here?
Right.
And that's critical, I think, for us as leaders to identify those characteristics and embed them in our day-to-day practices of how we lead. Because people, number one, they want to be heard. They want to know that their challenges are important. And they want to know that you're there to help walk through and get to some resolution. And so on the macro level, we do this like in companies, for example. And when it supports the mission, vision, and the values, we want all of our team members to work toward resolution within those confines. So, because people sometimes say, well, Nate, aren't you focusing too much on the individual? Aren't you like missing the grander scheme of the customer and all this other, all these other mandates and things that are important in business? Like, you know what? It's a great point. Here's what I believe. I believe if you can create strong, cohesive teams that are truly driven to do their best possible work and create a massively impactful experience through the experience you create for them, you've got a strong organization. You're going to get stuff done. So start with your team, start with your internal and say, hey, look, how can I create an environment where your experience is exceptional and you can do your best possible work in your genius zone? Like, who doesn't want to work in a company that starts there?
Right.
It's a good starting place and committed to that. And that doesn't mean things don't go wrong, but I think it was Herb Kelleher, a Southwest Airlines CEO, who was once asked, who's most important, your customer or your employee? And he famously said, my customer is most important because I make my employee most important. It's starting with that internal team as a leader, building, developing them, and then turning to do great work for your end user, whoever it is that you're serving.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you on that, Nate. And time is that one thing you can't buy back. And I think leaders, we're all super busy, right? Our schedules are overpacked, but we need to block, right? We need to schedule those blocks of time to give to the people that are most important to us. And it is the best retainment tool you could ever have. But it takes time, and it's time away from solving another problem. But when people know you give a damn and you care and you'll just listen, right? They will be more open-minded. You will build more trust. And if you have trust, man, you have it all, right? That is the foundation of any great relationship, whether it's with your partner, your spouse, or your colleague, or your direct report. Now you have the gold. Now you can start building. They will follow you into the water. They will do whatever is required to make that company successful.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up because we use the word trust. We don't really, I don't think we take for granted its impact and its value and utilizing it, keeping it top of mind. I remember Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Old one, but a good one, right?
That's a staple, right?
That's a staple. And so I remember in the book, he talks about trust and he identifies trust with 2 primary characteristics. He calls them the pillars of trust. He says competence and character. So knowing how to do what you say you know how to do, competence, and character, doing the right thing for the right reasons. He says, there's a lot of other factors in trust. In fact, I almost wrote my dissertation on trust and different aspects and characteristics of it. However, if we just focus on those 2 things, am I developing into the kind of person who has massive competence? I can get the work done that I propose that I can get done. And then do I have good character? Do I have moral integrity, right? Do I have principles that I can stand by that others can rely on and recognize that whatever Todd and Nate say they will accomplish, they'll see it through. It may take a little longer, it may take a little less time,
right.
but they're committed. But those are the pillars and the foundation, I think, of trust. And here's the other thing you had mentioned about. I love that you're bringing these concepts up. The calendar. We're leaders. We are the keepers of our calendar. And so often I'll just step up to be the first one to say, yes, guilty as charged. So often we leave very little margin in our calendars because we're doers. We want to get stuff done and we want to be very effective and efficient. The problem is that we don't leave enough margin for rest or for reflection or for that one-off question or something that might be needed to be addressed. We run so hot that we don't take the time necessary to function well. It's like, hey, and just like a machine, we're humans. But if that machine runs constantly without getting maintenance or oil or anything else, it's going to malfunction.
It's going to get burned out. I just listened to your episode with the dentist.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right? It just happens. You just get thrown in and you just keep going, going, going. But if you don't have a reminder, right? A check-in. So, and that's where a coach comes in. That's where
That's
I
right.
really feel like, and
Yeah.
I'm not kind of toot my own horn here, and I have a coach. And man, she's my checkpoint. She is my accountability partner. Everybody is struggling with something. Everybody needs someone to talk to so that they'll listen. And everyone needs to get off their island, right? We all need to get it, especially leaders. It can be lonely. I always say, find your thinking partners, find those people that you can trust, that you can get into a safe space where you can just talk or vent or brainstorm, whatever, right? But leadership is lonely and it is heavy and it is a huge responsibility. So if you are a leader, you need to constantly be reminded that there is a lot here. And if you're a parent, you're a leader, and that's a huge responsibility, right? So we need to be on this trajectory of personal growth and getting better every single day.
Yeah, man, I love that. The community is so important with leadership, and it's lonely, and depending on, of course, the different kinds of environments, whether it's parenting or a business or community, uh, there's so many different challenges along the way, and we need one another. And I love that you brought up the coaching aspect of it, because there are others who are a few steps ahead, and they can help guide and just be not only a barometer, but be a sounding block. Sometimes the best coach, again, back to the first part, is just listening, right? They just need to listen. And then perhaps, hey, I love that, because sometimes leaders will flesh out what needs to happen sometimes with a great coach. You know this, Todd. Sometimes it's like, oh my goodness, wow, you listened the whole time and you helped me find my answer. And that's right.
That's it. Really, that's all you're doing. You're just guiding.
Yeah.
Right. You're really supposed to allow them to find the solution because they're going to be bought in more, right? Because at the end of the day, we can provide our employees, our clients with all the tools and resources, but they need to make the choice.
Yep.
Only they can make that choice.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And here's the other thing that you'd mentioned about some of that that process and the calendar and all that. I would also just to consider when you're taking a look at your calendar and you're saying, I'm going to give myself more margin. I would also include or encourage you to include margin for grace. To first receive some grace, because we run hard, we're hard on ourselves. And I would even put it in the calendar. Like, hey, you know what? Here's a 15-minute sliver for grace.
A grace sliver. Dude, that was my focus word last year.
Oh, wow.
My coach said, look, Todd, you are beating yourself up. Never good enough syndrome. You need to give yourself some grace. So I had sticky notes on my laptop. I had it in my journal, my daily journal. I have reminders on my phone. I needed it to be visible, right? Like a habit. I needed to create that environment where I saw it often enough with different senses that then it just became kind of a habit. And I'm still working on it. I'm definitely not perfect, but we got to get ourselves some self-compassion, right?
Absolutely. And then you can turn around and give it away.
Give it away. That's right. But typically we're more prone to do that and always harder on ourselves.
Yeah, this is true.
I'm glad you brought that up. Grace is huge. I hear it a lot. I don't know if people truly understand what it means or how important it is, because when you're beating yourself up, that puts you in a negative mindset. And then you could throw off your whole day, right? You can't visualize, you can't manifest those dreams or overcoming those obstacles because you're just focused on the negativity. So if you can shift your mindset into a positive reframe, you're going to be on your way to success and fulfillment.
Oh yeah, and if you're listening and you're of course anyone can look it up. However, I like the terminology to describe grace as unmerited favor. Because we're earners. As leaders, we're always earning. We're always trying to get meritocracy. Everything is, and unmerited favor is saying, you know what? I didn't have to actually work for this. I'm just going to give myself just a reprieve that I didn't have to earn.
I love that, man. I'm
Yeah.
going to pull that out and make that a social graphic. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
man. Yeah.
I'm
Hey,
a quote you.
just sort your cites. As your site. Sort your sources.
Sources. Yeah.
I haven't
I
had any coffee today.
say that 3 times fast.
Yeah, definitely.
Good
No, man,
stuff,
for
man.
sure. It's solid. And I think people need to hear it, and they need to take it into action
Hmm.
and just live more wholly, more fully. And my philosophy is I think of four pillars of health, if you will. And what we do, especially on our education side, on our Great Summit side, you had mentioned earlier, and we have an educational community for entrepreneurs in a faith-based environment that focuses on four pillars of health. So the first pillar is spiritual health. Having a sound spiritual, being spiritually healthy. I tell my son sometimes, "Hey, are you nourishing your spirit?" I'm like, "Dad, what do you mean nourishing my spirit?" Because everything is so physical, right? Like, how could I
Hmm.
physically nourish my spirit? I have a banana in my hand. Like, well,
Nice.
it doesn't come from like necessarily food. It comes from spiritual food, right? And in our case, scripture or prayer or fellowship with others who share in your spiritual values, etc. So spiritual health. The second pillar, psychological health. This is your mental and your emotional health. So important, right? So important to be healthy there, nourish your mind to grow and sharpen, nourish your emotions so that you're emotionally healthy, emotionally resilient, and emotionally mature. And then the third pillar, physical health, taking good care of this temple we're entrusted with. The more we take care of it, the
Hmm.
better it's going to function.
Hmm.
You put leaded gas in your car, the engine's going to start knocking. It's just the way that
Hey,
people are like, "What's leaded gas?" Like,
yeah,
I remember when there was such a thing.
yeah. We say garbage in, garbage out.
That's right.
What you put
So
in.
100% put good fuel into that physical body. And then the fourth pillar, financial health. We need financial health to function in life. We know most people stress more than anything about
Hmm.
money,
Yeah. You
right?
would know. CPA,
I would know. Let me tell you, accountants, we know firsthand.
numbers guy.
Oh, for sure. And so we want to develop financial health. That means impulse resisting, right? It's okay to wait. We don't need to get the 90-inch TV if the 70-inch is working just fine, right? Maybe if you've got financial health, then make that decision. But we live in a world where everything is now, 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 and then we face the consequences of it because we lived on impulse. So if we can take those four pillars and we can maximize their health level, we're going to live more wholly. We're going to be better aligned and functioning in that way. And I think that for me and for those who I get to be honored to serve alongside of, it's transformational.
I love it. It's that holistic approach, and that's how I teach my life optimization techniques. It's looking at everything. Everything's tied to the hip, right? So if you're not nourishing your mind and body and your soul, or either one of those pillars equally, then you're just not going to fully be balanced. That takes work, right? That's a
Oh yeah, it
lot.
takes
That's a
work.
lot of work. It's just like perfecting a golf swing. There's a lot of different variables that go into hitting that tiny little ball.
That's right. Yeah, and those four pillars, the way I look at it is they hold up the rooftop of your home, as if you will, all the relationships you have, which live inside
Mm,
your
I can
home.
see. I can visualize.
You
I
can
like
visualize
that.
that, right? So
I
you
can
go into
the
this
four.
building with these pillars, and
Mm,
here's all your relationships. Your
yeah.
relationship with your creator, your relationship with your family, your relationship with your community, social community, civic community, church, your relationship with nature, of course, and all creation, and your relationship with your business. And oftentimes we run real heavy on the business side relationship. We spend an inordinate amount of time in that area. And the way I see business is designed to fund your ideal life. It is not your ideal life. And so many people climb that ladder of success, Todd, and I've seen it over these years. And they get to the top and they realize all this time that the ladder was leaning against the wrong building.
Mm,
And you just like, let's evaluate that building, you
mm,
know?
yeah.
Let's just evaluate that those are the four pillars that building is on. And that's the building you want to climb, because at the end of the day, you talked about the end journey, right? And even Stephen Covey talks about beginning with the end in mind. Like, I always encourage people, write your tribute, write your eulogy, write the end statement of your life, and then work backwards.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And honestly, I take a slightly different approach in that I don't feel there's an end game. It's the
Hmm.
infinite game. Because for me, because it allowed me, I struggle with embracing the journey. I'm a perfectionist, or I used to be, and I want to check off a box. I want to get to, here's the 5 things to get there to the summit. I'm there, I'm done, right? And then you're like, well, what's next? But if you can just enjoy and embrace the small shifts, right? That's where the goal's at. And you just keep going, right? I'm just constantly going and getting better and better. But I love the idea of the ladder. And yeah, we want to pursue what makes us happy, and we want to make sure we're climbing the right ladder.
Yeah, true fulfillment, and you'll love this. It's on that level. So with Great Summit, when I was sharing with the team the long term goals of this ecosystem, this community, and this ministry, if you will, let's look at it like over the next 1,000 years. Like, oh, Nate, that's a long way. Yeah, it's okay. Let's do that. Let's not just say, hey, in my lifetime or in your lifetime or even 100-year business, right? Say, okay, in the next 1,000 years, what will people continue to need that this experience will provide for them? And let's do that. That's what you're talking about, Todd. You're talking about like the infinite game, right? And even 1,000 years, maybe it's not enough time, right? Maybe I should have did 10,000 years, right?
Right.
Maybe we'll be interplanetary, but that's vision. And there's a lot of things we don't know that are going to happen in the next 1,000 years. However, you're calling it out, and you're not just stopping with your lifetime. That's strong. Like
Hmm.
that's a powerful statement. It's like, hey, you know what? Others are going to take this mantle and continue on with the foundational values and the desire to help and to really help to make people uh, truly fulfilled, better human beings, and more satisfied
Hmm.
in life. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because that's right on the lines of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, go beyond ourselves.
Go beyond ourselves. Right. You talk about rise to the greatest call of humankind. That's one of your
Yeah, man.
mottos, right?
Yeah, man. That's it. It's serving others.
Serving others.
That's the call to greatness is through
Well,
service.
yeah, you talk a lot about servant leadership. That's a big piece of who you are and your program.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the turning point for me. Remember I told you I wanted to be a millionaire when I
Mhm.
dropped out of college back in 2000. What was it? The year was 1995. I was trying to serve me. Right. That's the focus. Right. Me. And then that's one of the reasons why I was floundering. It's like, you know what, Nate? That's not the formula.
Mm.
It took me some time, and when I figured it out, it's like, oh no, the pathway to greatness is serving others. That's where it's found. And once I began to, and I think, oh gosh, which there's a bunch of guys have spoken on this.
Go
It'll come to
giver.
me. What's that? The go giver, right? Yeah, yeah. It's like, hey, you know what? You can help people solve their problems, and they'll help you solve yours, right? And you do that with sincerity. You do that with genuinity. You do that with care, and people will begin to then bind around you because your value proposition increases in the marketplace and anywhere when you go from adversary to ally, because sales and business is adversarial generally, right? Because you're trying to take something. You're trying to take my
Mm.
time and or my money, right?
Mm.
That's, hey, how many people have gone through the mall and avoided that middle kiosk trying to
Oh
like get you
gosh,
lotion or whatever
like
else, right?
snake
You're
bobbing and
navigating,
weaving like
right? Yeah,
I got
because
skis on.
it's an adversarial conversation because
Mm.
maybe I don't want you to have my time or my money.
Right.
What if that's not the conversation? What if the conversation is, look, I just have these kind of problems I can solve. This is how I serve. This is my avatar. If you know anyone or you're that person, then let's talk. You go from adversary to ally. That's the function of true servant leadership. That's the function of that. I'm no longer focused. Now, granted, your needs are important. I'm not saying that you won't ever have your own needs met. But I actually identify success in 5 words. And here's the 5 words that I use. I say this: solve relevant problems with excellence. We solve problems for our clients and our stakeholders and whoever it is who we're calling to follow, who are our followers, our families, et cetera, et cetera. We also solve our problems because you may have a problem. Hey, look, I need to make sure I make payroll for my team. Okay, let me solve that problem with excellence by providing a service or a product that is valuable in the marketplace at a price that's positioned properly, that also provides enough margin for us to pay our bills, grow our company, et cetera, right? If you can do those things with excellence, there's a lot of other pieces to it. But that's how, and the problems have to be relevant. And when they're relevant, they're important, right? And the way I define relevance is you can hear it, you can understand it, and it causes you to go to action, right? Those are 3 pieces of relevance. And if you can do that consistently, you'll run strong.
Mm-hmm.
You'll run faithful. You'll run in a way that is truly remarkable, and you won't leave anything on the table. You'll give your very best, and you'll reap the benefits. Yeah,
I love it. Well, you've had so many different businesses. Serial entrepreneur. You started so young.
yeah.
There's so many things that you're doing, Nate. What gets you up in the morning?
Oh man, great question. So here's my thing. I wake up every morning and I say the same thing every morning. And it's this. I open my eyes and I say, I'm here. Thank you, God. My work is not finished yet. My every day I wake up, if I wake up, that means that my work's not finished. That means that I have people to serve. I have good to bring into this world. And I have a mission to help wherever I can. And when I lay my head down at night, as long as there's someone who has benefited from my effort, it's a good day.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a mic drop moment there. I have to ask about the marathon runner, and I saw triathlon too. So
Yeah.
Are you still doing these things? There's a tremendous amount of preparation, resilience, and time that's needed to basically overcome one of these goals, right? So how do you do that with all these things that you're doing, and so you have a family?
Great question. Yeah, I did triathlon and marathon for a long time, and I actually had I did all the way up to 70.3 Ironman, which is basically a half iron, and I was going for the full iron, and I had a back injury. Not running, not swimming, not cycling. It was actually at the office. I picked up a copy machine and I turned the wrong way, and I already had some intermittent back issues, and I had 2 bulging discs. So I herniated 2 discs, L5, S1. Bad day. So
oh man, sorry.
My doctor said, no more running, no more swimming, no more cycling until we can get this back thing under. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is my life. This is my life. I loved the pursuit of it, because when I was conditioning myself to overcome these obstacles through the physical endurance, it helped me to overcome obstacles later in different areas. For example, as you had mentioned, I've owned an accounting and advisory firm for a long time. Tax seasons are brutal. And when you're working till midnight, 1 a.m, remembering what you have overcome and the challenges, and this mental toughness you had talked about earlier, it helped me to get through those days. It's like, dude, you're an Ironman. You can do this. You can do this. And recently I just started getting back, and I've been doing a lot of strength training over time. So I recently started, I got a buddy who's like, hey, let's do a marathon together. And I was like, okay, let me get the oil out and get these knees, squeaky knees so I'm training. We'll see how that goes. Of course, with health is the most important aspect of this journey. However, I encourage anyone who's able physically to challenge themselves physically within reason, of course, without being injured, and build that toughness. Whether it could be just, and don't look at anyone else. You go with your own ability, and give yourself, reward yourself every time you hit a milestone. Celebrate that milestone. Don't, I'm not going to look at. I never looked at what they called them. They call them elite athletes. They're getting done with an Ironman like 2.5 hours. Like, this is like, of course I'm exaggerating, but they're almost superhuman, right? I just want a PR. I just want a personal record. I just want to continue to improve and progress. And then And then take time to celebrate. As leaders, we just don't take enough time to stop and say, back to the gratitude
and grace
and the grace. And those have helped me tremendously.
All tied to the hip, brother. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, there's a lot there. That's awesome. Well, good for you. Good for you getting into that. That's huge. That's huge. I almost stick with pickleball and weights, but
Hey,
I'll be watching for you.
There you go, brother. I appreciate you.
Man, Nate, this has been just a great conversation. I love what you're doing in the leadership community. I mean, you've committed essentially your life to this. I love the principles that you bring to the table and what you're preaching. The Great Summit Leadership Academy sounds like a tremendous program. If there's one thing you would love our audience to take away today, and I know we've dropped some serious nuggets, but I know you got something in there. One last one. What would you want to leave with?
Oh man, great. And it's great being with you and great way to end. I would say many people want to see change in the world for the better. And many people don't realize just how much power there is simply by us modeling what the change we want to see in the world can be. So I would say for anyone listening, be that change and don't ever think twice that your change is not seen and it doesn't matter when it's for the good of those who you seek to lead.
Thank you, my friend. That's a great way to end. Nate, how can people reach out to you if they're interested in hiring your financial team or signing up for one of your courses or classes at the Great Summit Leadership Academy?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the show notes be great. Just put greatsummit.com or theincometaxcenter.com for our accounting and advisory side, or for our leadership development side. We're fully invested in both sides of the equation. We think they're both necessary for healthy businesses and healthy leadership.
I couldn't agree more. I wasn't a numbers guy. I'm a graphic designer by trade. So starting a business and learning QuickBooks and Excel, boy, those have become my best friends.
There you go.
I'm pretty damn good. I wouldn't say I'm a guru like you, but I'm kind of liking numbers now, which is my math teacher in high school would say, wow, Todd, good for you, man.
Good for you. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So yeah, thanks, Nate. I appreciate you. Let's continue our conversation and reconnect again, brother.
Absolutely. Be well, brother.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bolt Podcast. You're on an inspiring journey of growth, transformation, and joy, and I'm honored to be a part of it. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with your friends, and consider leaving a review. It means the world to us. For show notes, resources, and to subscribe to the weekly Motivational Monday newsletter, please visit toddbirch.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media @TheBolt for more inspiration. Remember, real change doesn't happen overnight, folks. Start small, stay consistent, and watch as your growth unfolds. See you next time.